Hi, my name is Sara. I'm an educator and artist in residence with Keswick Wise and Well Center in Baltimore, Maryland, and today I'm going to be showing you how to do a charcoal transfer drawing. For this process, we're going to need a photograph that you'd like to trace. In this case, I have this lovely photograph right here. A piece of paper that you'd like to trace it on. I'm just using regular cheap printer paper. Some vine charcoal. Vine charcoal is thinner and it breaks more easy. It comes in boxes that look like this. When you're using it, an individual stick looks like this, and again, breaks real easy. That's how you know it's the right kind. Compressed charcoal takes a little bit more vigor to snap. Vine charcoal is easy to break. Okay. We'd also need some tape. Any kind of tape will do. And a sharpened pencil. It doesn't need to be a high quality art pencil. It can be a number 2 Ticonderoga pencil if you prefer. So once you have all your supplies, that's great. I also like to have just a nice little rubber eraser to pick up any extra charcoal that's around my drawing after I do my tracing, but it's not necessary. So let's get started. All right, so the first thing you're going to need to do to get started is make sure you have the photograph in the size and scale that you want it. I'm hoping to do a larger profile of this person, so I've printed it to this size, just standard 8.5 by 11. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to flip your drawing over. We're going to do this because a lot of times when people trace, they put the photograph behind something and then the paper on top, and they put it up to a window, or they have a light source project through, and we don't need to do any of that. So we can draw exactly what we see as we see it. So I'm going to flip my photograph over, and then I'm going to take some of the vine charcoal. You don't need a long stick, you just need a little bit. And I'm going to start lightly covering the back. Taking good care to make sure that where I know that the photograph is, like the portrait portion, is being covered adequately. You may hear some high-pitched squealing. It's the charcoal coming off. Don't worry about that. I like to get pretty decent coverage going horizontally and then vertically. Some people, when they do this technique, they prefer to just like slowly color like this, but that takes a really long time. It tends to make the drawing that you're tracing more messy. So doing the lightest application of the charcoal is what's going to be what's best. Okay. So after I've done this, I'm going to set my charcoal aside, make sure my hands are clean enough to do the next process, which they are, and I'm going to take the paper that I want to trace on. Okay. I'm going to make sure that I have everything where I want it. I'm going to grab some tape. I'm going to set it aside. You want the tape to be aside and pulled when you need it, because when you're taping something down and you're trying to get it in the spot that you want it, having it prepared and at the ready helps you apply it in the exact position that you need it. So I'm going to take the side where I've applied the vine charcoal, and now I'm just going to lay it down where I want it. I'm offsetting this a little bit because I want the figure to go slightly off the page, so I'm dropping it down a little bit. This also means that when I put the tape down, I have something to tape it to. You don't have to tape it directly to the table. So it's going straight on the paper. You can tape it directly on your surface that you're working on, but if you want to put it on the paper, you can do that as well. Now you'll notice that I haven't rubbed on the drawing yet. That's because we're going to do our best from this point forward, not to just lay our hands where we've applied the charcoal on the back. So applying the tape to the paper allows us to move the drawing around, right, instead of having it be static, and that makes it a little bit easier not to smudge the charcoal on the back. Okay, so I'm going to start by just tracing the contour, the outline of this figure. And this is something where you can take your time. If this is the first time you're doing this technique, I suggest attempting a simpler profile, a simpler drawing, as opposed to something a bit more complex that has a lot of detail, because if this is the first time that you're doing it, there might be a couple smudges or a few mistakes. So by practicing on simpler contours and simpler figures or objects, you can get a feel for the process, get a feel for the technique. Notice again, I'm not putting my hand down hard, I'm putting my fingerprints down, the tips of my fingers. That's what that eraser that's next to me is for later, so we can just pick up those little marks. Now, this is where you get to decide what's important enough to trace. I'm not doing the detail in her dress, but I might trace her earring, and knowing that allows me to kind of plan how I'm gonna start the next part of the drawing. Take your time doing this. It's not a race, it's a marathon. Whatever you trace above on your photograph is going to show up on your drawing underneath. This is where you get to decide if it's worth it to draw those eyelashes out, or if you want to apply those in later. I'm doing a little bit of both just so I know where things are. Whenever you're doing a charcoal transfer of a figure, it's really important to remember, if you're trying to articulate things like the hairline and the lips, to make sure that you go over those spots, because it's really easy to forget, because if you're drawing a certain level of detail, it's easy to miss something, especially in things like the ear. Now, if you get to this point and you're not sure if you forgot something, if you've taped this to the paper or the table, you can lift it and see how far you are, right? So you can see, because I'm not applying a heavy hand when I'm holding this, that there's not too many smudges. You can also see that the lightness allows me to, of the charcoal application, allows me to see the contour, but it's not heavy and dark, so if I want to make adjustments, it's easy to erase. So I can see that I need to go back in and address the nose a little bit, get the nostril, right? Make sure that I have all the details that I want before I take it to the next phase. Some people, this is where they might apply a little bit of texture or drop in shadowing where they see it. I actually really love applying shadow this way because it allows me to pre-plan the next phase of my drawing, especially if I'm doing something that's really detailed and going to take a long time. And there we go. So from here, you would delicately remove the tape and the paper, and then you can start going in and applying your actual pencil marks. Okay? But what's handy with the eraser is that if I see a little smudge right here, I can just go back in, lift that up. If I don't like the way I did a line here, or I don't think I want the drawing to go down that far because I've lightly applied the charcoal, I can erase that and it's like it wasn't there. I can see here that I missed the back of her hair, so I can go back here and draw that in very quickly and fix all those little things. So it allows some flexibility, and when you're tracing on a light source or something like that, that's a good process too, but the charcoal process allows you to apply it on any surface. If you're painting something, for instance, it's really difficult to use a light box, so using a charcoal line transfer is the most effective way to do that if you're not going to grit it out. Thanks for your time. Bye.